Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to our Transition in Between Realities, a comparison panel. Today we have two guests here to speak a little bit on their experiences in VR and offline running communities and what the differences are between them, the unique challenges. Um, so I'll let them introduce themselves. We'll start with you, Tizzy, if you want to give a little bit of an information about who you are.
Yeah, for sure. Hi, I'm Tizzy. I'm the lead janitor here at the Trans Academy. Um, I've been transitioning for a little over 11 years now. I think it's pretty close to 11 years. And when I started transitioning back in Los Angeles, I did not know any trans people. It was a time in my life where I basically was almost entirely trans online. And I was looking for a lot of like other people to be able to connect with. And one of the resources that I found while in LA was the LGBT Center. And I discovered that they had big events like Trans Pride, which was actually one of the inspirations for doing Trans Pride VR, was the event that Gina and her team work on over at the center. And later on, Trans Lounge eventually became more of like an educational program that they offered, where, like I said before, I started my voice training there, and they had other things like yoga classes and like improv classes, like so many other like cool offerings. And I'll let Gina talk a little bit more about that.
Hello, lovely folks. It is wonderful to be with you this evening. My name is Gina Bigham. My pronouns are she, her. And as Tizzy said, I am the program manager for the Trans Lounge. We run out of the Los Angeles LGBT Center. Trans Lounge is, I like to call it, an empowerment and community building program. What we do is we offer groups, support spaces, workshops, in-person social events, all kinds of different things to keep our community engaged, and and connected. We do workshops. As Tizzy said, we have stand-up comedy workshops. We do support spaces for gender expansive folks that are neurodivergent. We have spaces for folks to talk about gender affirming healthcare in all its facets and forms, and how folks can navigate that system. We do courses for folks who are looking to upgrade their employment opportunities. We have tarot reading. We have, my gosh, we just did a voice training class, as Tizzy mentioned. And tomorrow, actually, we're doing a hike at Ferndale here in Los Angeles. So we've got a lot of lots of fun things. As I said, I might have mentioned, we've got about 6,300 members of Trans Lounge. We do upwards of 20 different groups, classes, workshops each month. We also navigate, help kind of case manage folks with resources. The center is very large. We have over 800 employees and 10 different locations throughout Los Angeles. And so we have a lot of resources available for gender expansive folks. If folks are interested in becoming part, and a lot of our things are virtual, mostly via Zoom. We have not caught up with your technology just yet, but we do things mostly via Zoom. So there's plenty of accessibility for folks that might not be in the Los Angeles area. And we've had folks join our groups from as far away as Jerusalem. So we have folks in New York, we have folks in Texas, all over. And so if anyone's interested, please feel free to reach out to us. Everything we do is free. And you can join the fun at translounge.org.
That's amazing. It's really impressive to see and hear about all the stuff you guys do and how some of it is very similar to us, but you guys have an amazing physical location as well. I was lucky enough to see it a few years back during Trans Pride. Very impressive. So definitely glad to have you here tonight.
Thank you. Oh, it's
So
my
I have
absolute
some.
pleasure. Oh, and I didn't even mention that. That's another thing. That's another facet of my position here at the center is also for the last. I've been at the center 13 years, and in that time, I have become. Well, I am the lead organizer for Trans Pride LA, which is one of the largest trans-specific sort of gatherings that take place each year in the third week of June. We do it here in our where I'm working out of, which is a space called the Village. We're a block. If folks are familiar with the Hollywood area, we're a block east of Santa Monica and Highland in Los Angeles.
Yeah, that is such a cool space. I've been over to the village before, and it's amazing to see, especially during Pride, when Pride is happening, and there's just like hundreds, if like not thousands of trans people there. And it was just like such an amazing thing to behold, especially like not having ever seen a trans person before in my life, like when I had started transitioning. And so it really felt like home. It really felt comfortable, and it felt like it was a movement.
It is. It really is. And one thing that I'm very, very, very passionate about is that these events uh, are free and remain free to our community. And as Tizzy, I don't know the last time that you were at Trans Pride, but it's grown quite a bit. We had close to 2,000 people last year. We now close the street in front of the village, so it's kind of a gender expansive street fair, if you will. It's and we call it our Trans Pride Love Bubble. And because again, I'm big on grassroots and keeping things, just the idea that a pride event is going to cost somebody $100 to attend. At least that's kind of how it is out here in Los Angeles for most of these events. Just doesn't sit with me. I want folks to feel empowered. I want them to feel that they are valued. And so I want everyone to have the same experience, whether someone lives in the big mansion on the hill or, whether they are unhoused. They are all going to get the same experience when they come through our doors. They're going to be fed. They're going to, get catered food. There's beverages, workshops. My gosh, what else? Resource fair. Uh, Street vendors sharing, all trans folks that are sharing their talents and their wares. So yeah, it's something very special to me that we keep those things free and accessible. That's a big word for me. I'm a big fan of accessibility in all its facets.
Absolutely. And I think that we also ideologically align at the Academy as well. Accessibility is such an important thing to us, and especially like avoiding doing any kind of financial gatekeeping when it comes to those resources and being able to continue to make them as open and free to everybody who wants access to it. And I know that the center is doing amazing work as well, like you mentioned, with housing, but also like one of the coolest things at the center is they have like a whole like doctor's office with like a pharmacy, and it's just like you're also
Yes.
offering trans healthcare as well.
We absolutely do. We have a whole separate building that is strictly our medical building. It's about a mile away from where we are on Schrader Avenue in Hollywood, right in between Selma and Hollywood Boulevard. We do have a pharmacy. We have a very robust trans health program. There's also trans behavioral health with lots of groups and mental health, one-on-one counseling for folks. And we also have what we call the Trans Wellness Center, which is another one of our locations. It's a satellite location of the center. They do amazing work with providing folks with health care, mental health care, a clothing closet. You know how it can often be such a struggle, especially for folks that are just at the beginning stages of their journey to replenish a wardrobe. How hard is that oftentimes? And so the clothing closet comes in really, really handy for folks. There is a trans economic empowerment project that runs out of our wellness center. Folks that are looking for help with navigating employment opportunities with gender expansive friendly employers, help with resume building, case management, help with housing navigation. That one sometimes is kind of tricky. There's such a need, unfortunately, for housing spaces, especially for gender expansive folks, where shelters and things can be very, very unsafe for a trans person. So lots of resources and lots of opportunities for growth and connection with within the center.
Absolutely. Yeah, the center is doing so many cool things. It almost feels like it's like the cutting edge of trans care. You know, you guys are pioneering like a lot of like really like new things that not a lot of other centers are doing.
Well, we do the best we can. You know, it feels oftentimes it does feel a little like an uphill battle because the more we do, uh, more we see the need for even more. And so that can sometimes be a challenge is to meet the needs of as many folks as we possibly can. I don't like to turn anyone away. Everyone that comes through our trans lounge doors, you know, instantly becomes part of our trans lounge family. And you know, there's obviously there's work to be done, not just on our end, but on the members end, because it can be scary to, and especially for folks at the beginning stages of their journey, to come, as Tizzy was saying, didn't know anybody before finding us, and you know, to provide, you know, I have three tenets of Trans Lounge that I am very, very passionate about, and that's that folks feel safe, they feel welcome, and that they feel comfortable in whether it be our virtual spaces, our in-person spaces, all of these things. It's very, very important to me that we show that love right off the bat, where folks are able to hopefully, you know, kind of take a deep breath and know that A, they're not alone. I think that can be, you know, one of the things that really, really hard to overcome is to feel that they're part of something larger than just themselves. And also the idea that, you know, we can connect community and not just around our transness. You know, we do. I'm big on creativity and wellness workshops. So our transness can oftentimes just be, you know, a small part of a much larger sort of experience with us.
That's amazing.
Absolutely.
So you both talked about creating a safe space for trans people here, and so I would like to ask you to some both of you some questions regarding that. Especially with the differences between both communities having a physical space and a more virtual presence. So to begin with, you've touched on growth in the community. So my first question for you guys would be, how has the concept of the transgender community space evolved for you over time? And how has this manifested differently in physical versus virtual environments?
Well, I could start with that. You know, in physical environments, again, the goal is to make people feel safe. I think to make them feel welcome, comfortable, and especially safe. I don't think I'm breaking any news here. We all know that you know, our community has suffered some slings and arrows. Apologies for that. I've suffered some slings and arrows over the last few years, and it can be a scary time. It can be a scary time for community, and so I think for us, it's providing a comfort level to be as transparent as possible with things that we do, and to also, you know, let folks know when they do come to us, again, that they are they're not just a client, they are part of a family. And there's security around all of our spaces. And um, I think people, especially when they've come a couple of different times to the village or to our campus or to our medical building, that they know that they're walking into a place where they're going to be respected, where they're going to be supported, and be able to get the help that they're looking for. Again, and sometimes it can take a little while because there is such a need. But I thrive on it. It's what it's just my passion. Just love being able to help the community. I transitioned about 14 years ago, 15 years ago, and it's my goal, it's my passion to make the path forward for other folks that are just starting out to walk a less bumpy road than those that came before.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think you nailed it on the head with the safety factor. I think that's something that we also very
Yeah.
much prioritize here at the Academy. And of course, it looks a little bit different in VR than it does in real life. In real life, of course, there's like a physical safety component to it. And that's not something that, we really have a problem with here. But we have more of a problem with emotional abuse that can happen. And it's just like a whole different kind of set of issues. But at the same time, I think we're very much aligned in making sure that our members have a place where they can come and feel like they can fully express themselves and be like unapologetically authentic and not have pushback and hate because of that. We want people to feel comfortable here. And I think in that kind of degree, we're kind of similar to what, the center is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's imperative. I mean, to me, it's not just a requirement. I mean, it is imperative that folks do feel that safety, and just to be able, like you said, just to be unabashedly authentic in whatever. And we do a lot of most of our virtual programming comes via Zoom. But again, we're very, very stringent about our security on Zoom. I'm proud to say that in the 4+ years that we've been offering a virtual platform, again, not as cool and awesome as this space, but through Zoom, we've never had any sort of uh, Zoom bombers or any sort of disruptions in our group spaces, because we do take a lot of care to make sure that those spaces are moderated safely and correctly.
Yeah,
Perfect. So,
absolutely.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I think that it's like really important to differentiate. I feel like technology will never necessarily be a replacement for real life. I feel like we are organic beings, and like there's a certain chemistry that happens when we're able to engage in real life. But again, it kind of goes back to the accessibility factor because not everybody has the ability to do that. What the center is doing is something that is very much pinned to the like locale of Los Angeles, and it's not something that necessarily like scales in a physical level. And that's something that we tried to do here at the Academy because one of the things about social VR is like the high level of presence that you get with somebody. You really do feel like you're in the room with them. And while it's not like the deep kind of like chemistry that you would get in real life, for some people, like that's all they have access to. And we try to maximize that as much as we can.
Absolutely. I know that it is a bit of a double-edged sword in that I facilitate a lot of groups that we run, both virtual and in person. And I mean, I find benefit in both. I mean, there is that human connection, that, seeing someone's body language, being in the same room, just sharing energy together as opposed to being in a virtual space. There is something to be said for that, for sure. But again, the accessibility component is something that is so important because for folks that are familiar with the LA area, traffic is a mess all the time, and you just never know getting to Hollywood can be quite a challenge for a lot of folks. And so being able to kind of meet them where they are and give them the same kind of connection, same kind of support as we would for folks that are coming in person. So to me, that's kind of icing on the cake. If I had a preference, I don't know if I could. I don't even know if I could discern one from the other. I mean, I think there is something kind of special about the in-person things, but both the in-person and the virtual spaces. Whenever I'm done with a group, I always find that I am sort of floating out of the room in whichever space it is, just because we're able to connect. Just connecting with people is to me that's everything. Connecting with them, showing them they're not alone, and that with a little work, because there is work involved in putting yourself out there. It can be very scary, especially if you're coming into spaces for the first time, where you're feeling scared and alone and unsure of what you're going to encounter. And so to be able to wherever, being on the Zooms or being in person, to just give them a welcome, a big hearty welcome and a hug, and whatever, a virtual hug, whatever we can do to make their experience as pleasant as possible, because that's going to be hopefully the springboard for them to to move down their path with freedom, and with the most authenticity that they possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely. And it almost seems like the ideal situation is like having these two things kind of augment each other. And it's something that I see a
Mm.
lot happen in VR chat, where people will start their identity exploration here because they have that kind of blank canvas to be able to try on different ways of being. They have like different ways to interact with the community. And then it allows them to be like, hey, I actually feel comfortable being this person. I want to also be that in real life. And then they're then able to kind of like take that and import it into more of the physical space. And so I really think at the end of the day, these sort of things work hand in hand.
I agreed 100%. That is, I think at the end of the day, it's just about the connection, right? Whether it be virtual or whether it be in person, whether it be on Zoom, it's just connecting folks, expanding their horizons, pushing their envelopes, if you will, to make friends, because, and also, just oftentimes I find that you don't need, well, obviously we encourage folks to participate and to share their stories, share their experiences as much as possible. But oftentimes, again, folks are feeling, they're new, they're unsure of themselves, or I don't like the sound of my voice, or I don't like the way I look, or whatever it might be. To be able to uh, give them that outlet to just to be themselves, and to do the work, right, of putting themselves out there and finding people. But oftentimes, especially in the virtual spaces, sometimes folks will just keep their camera off. We don't hear from them, but that's fine. No, there's no obligation to necessarily have to be an active participant, because I think sometimes just sitting with community, and again hearing from other folks, it's like someone may share, and then the person listening, it's like, wow, that's very, very similar to what I'm going through. And again, it gets back to that whole notion of not feeling alone in this journey, because that, we can, obviously, we've been a marginalized community for so long, an isolated community for so long. But we are resilient. We are always resilient, and it is always, there's always room to grow. as both as a community and as individuals.
Yeah, definitely. And it's almost like you're fostering a space where you're giving people permission to finally be themselves. And I know because it's something that I also experienced as well with the center. I remember when I first moved to LA, I hadn't transitioned yet. I was still like trying to find a comfortable space where I could feel like I could go out and like present as myself without like fear of like physical harm. And I remember driving down Schrader, where the center was at, and seeing all the pride flags and seeing the trans flag and just everything, and being like, hey, you know what? This is an area where I feel comfortable being myself. And so I think just like inherently, just kind of by its existence, the center like has created this space where it allows people to just fully be themselves. And it's the same kind of energy that we try to capture and bring here into VR chat as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's no, as far as I'm concerned, there's no such thing as perfection. You know, we do the best we can to reach as many folks as possible and to help as many folks as possible. Is that always, is that always going to happen? Unfortunately, sometimes not. But we will bend over backwards to do everything we can to get folks the resources they need, the help that they need to live their most authentic and fulfilled lives.
Absolutely.
So, where do you two see the future of transgender safe spaces heading in the next 5 to 10 years? And what role do you think technology will play? And how can physical and virtual spaces work together to serve the community?
Well, I
Where
think it
things will
kind
be
of
in the
go.
next 5 to 10 years.
Go
Yeah,
ahead,
what's the
Gina.
future
Think,
look like?
I'm not going to get off on a tangent, but I think it's sort of incumbent upon all of us to. I think we're all activists in certain ways. I think when the word activist is said, people automatically think of a protest march or waving the flag or sign my petition or these kinds of things. Advocacy activism is simply getting out and voting. Being you don't have to knock on doors, you don't have to have signs in your yard, but to be part of the process. Volunteering, just giving back. I feel like those are things that can really help with because it takes a village, to create these safe spaces, and we can do all that
Yeah.
we can, to provide these spaces, but it's a two-way street. The community folks have to do do some work as well, and I think especially within the next 5 to 10 years, um, getting out and voting, making sure that our safety not just in California but all over the country, all over the world for that matter,
Mm.
is safe. Right now it's a bit tenuous. Folks living in some of those redder states are having a really hard time, and it breaks my heart. But if we work together, through community, through spaces like these, especially spaces where the accessibility is just, so immense, that excuse me, that we can create those safe spaces, but we have to do it together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that as time goes along, I think there's going to be this kind of like collective realization that gender is fluid and that we're going to see more and more young people identifying as trans in the future. And I feel like that there's going to be a demand for those resources, especially in spaces like, red states, like you mentioned, where they don't necessarily have that in real life. And so I think that, like, more speaking on the technology end of things, I think that, like, tech kind of addresses the scalability problem when it comes to trans resources and like accessibility of it. And being able to like start them down that path and then give them a space where they may not have access to that in their physical space, but then also giving them a path to be able to do things like career development, like you were saying, like I know the center like does like job placement, and then like also at the academy we're doing things like vocational training through the computer science classes and empowering trans people to be able to have the means to be able to go wherever they want, and not have to be just completely bound to VR. Like they have the ability to then go and bring that into real life.
Yeah. I think that's fabulous. I love it.
So can you see these physical and virtual spaces hybridizing more in the future? Can you see VR being utilized more in your physical center, for example?
Hmm. That's a good question. I will not, again, full transparency. I am not, I don't have a lot of experience with VR. Um, and so how it can work in sort of a hybrid situation, I need to explore more, to be honest with you,
Mm,
to be able
mm,
to know what what would what would work. I work with a lot of folks who you know don't have a lot of resources. And I don't know how many, although we're going to be trying some things out and testing the waters a bit with the Trans Academy to see what that looks like for us in the trans lounge spaces, how we can incorporate these things together. Honestly, I don't know, but I'm very excited to try it out and see how we can best connect both the VR and IRL worlds.
Yeah, you're so right, Gina. It is unexplored territory at this point, and it'll be interesting to see what works and what doesn't. But I think that it's work that is worth doing, because the end result of that could be incredibly beneficial to the community. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how we can do more hybridization, as you say, Shay, and potentially, do more portal events. Potentially, I know like the music community here in VR chat does that a lot, and I'd love to potentially do something like that at the center, or maybe like bring some HMDs or headsets to people who can, be able to explore VR chat from the center.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have with Trans Lounge, we see a wide variety of people, from we have youth, folks. I think the youngest person I've seen in any of our group spaces was 13. And I've seen folks, in their late 70s, early 80s that are participating in our spaces. So especially with the younger folks, who are, I think, a little more adept to the technology. I work with two amazing young folks that are, just they're such a help to me because it helps keep me kind of in the game. I'm pushing 60, so I'm kind of in the old lady category, but to keep just it's keeping up. I think for me personally, it's keeping up with the technology, learning about it, knowing more about it, and being able to explore it in spaces like this right now. That's why I'm so grateful to be with you all this evening, to be able to experience this. For me, it's really the first time um, in a VR space. So to be able to share this experience with you all means more to me than you can know.
The feeling is mutual for sure. I mean, having you here on stage with me today is really, really meaningful because the center was such a huge part of my story and like very
yeah.
inspirational for what we're doing here at the Academy. And I'm just super grateful that you're with us and continuing to inspire what we're doing here at the Academy. And I would love nothing more than to work with the center in the future.
Well, I really appreciate that. And you hit on a word that is another one of my buzzwords around here, and that is inspiration, right? And I feel that inspiration comes in so many different ways, shapes, and forms. I oftentimes hear from folks that'll say, I'll say, share your story, tell people who you are. It's so important to share those stories. I work at a grocery store. I don't do very much. I'm just me. I'm not a big hero or a shero or a theyro or any of those things. I'm just, an ordinary person. Well, no, everyone has a story. Everyone has inspiration in them. You never know, in sharing your story or sharing your perspective, experiences, who you're going to touch. And that's why, again, I go back to what I said before about everyone can be an activist. Sharing your story, doing a writing class. There's so many ways for folks to get who they are out there. And when they do that, you just don't know who you're going to inspire, who's going to say, oh, your words of wisdom may be the thing that launches someone else's journey and gets them on the right foot and gets them going, towards a happy, productive, and authentic life.
Yeah, so true. I recently heard somebody say that your story is your power. And it's who
Oh,
you are, and
yeah.
it's just so authentic. And I feel like that's something that could resonate with somebody, and that could be life changing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But that's the thing. You never know when that moment might come where you hear something that resonates with you so loudly that it's like, get it now. The fog lifts and everything looks clearer. So I encourage everyone that's here with us, everyone that's watching, share those stories. Be that inspiration for yourself and for someone else, because you never know who you're gonna touch and what impact you can have on someone else's life. It's really, and that's where you talk about life changing. For me, that just gives me, all of this changed my life. Going through this process, and I feel that I was so fortunate to find the center when I did, that you know giving back, it's that giving back that keeps me going, quite honestly, because the work is hard, the work is tedious. It's you work with so many folks that are in difficult situations. They are unhoused, they are losing their job, they've lost their family because they've come out and they've been ostracized from community and family. uh, so you just never know how you can impact someone's experience. So share those stories, y'all. You are all valid, you are all valuable, and all very important to this movement.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have such an opportunity to be the person who we needed when we started. And I know that, like, when I started going through transition, it was a very lonely experience, as you had mentioned earlier. It was just like
Yeah.
me and Google and like trying to figure things out. I think at the time it was like Susan's Place. Remember that board long time ago?
Oh
I
gosh,
do.
yeah.
There
Oh,
were like
yeah.
very few like resources to be able to find trans education. And back then, like, I wish that I had somebody who I could really look to as for guidance. And eventually I found that. One of my big inspirations, her name is Leia Leilu. She's the wonderful person who made the audio link here in via chat, and she was a big inspiration to me in real life, to the point where I almost like just kind of followed her transition template. Um, and I always thought, like, I want to be that person to somebody else as well. I want to be able to pay it forward, like you're saying, and be able to continue to be the person that I needed at the time.
Yeah. And I think, oftentimes we spend so much time looking ahead and looking at what's next. I think it's also important though, look back. Our we have a immensely rich trans history. We've been around forever and we are never going anywhere. There have been trans folks, you know, as far back as time goes. And so to me, we were talking about inspiration. I find a lot of inspiration when I look at our ancestors. And, there's so many amazing stories and people who have come before us that have helped us to lay the path, and we just become stewards of that path. And I encourage folks to, do some digging about our trans history. It's not just Marcia and Sylvia and Laverne Cox. There's a wonderful podcast that I discovered called One from the Vaults. And it's all about trans history. It's very digestible. It's like 30 to 40-minute podcasts. And it almost comforts me a lot of times because you hear these stories about, trans people in the 1900s in France. There's no VR, there's no social media, there's none of those things. Yet community finds community. And so I think in seeing where we came from, it's a big part of determining where we're going.
Absolutely. I have so much respect for the transcestors. I love that word. I've never heard that before. That
I
is so
do
good.
too. I'm saving that one.
That is amazing. But just like looking back into history and seeing what the people who came before us went through, and just like not having the access to resources like we have today, and just sort of having to go their journey on their own, and like they didn't have access to the healthcare that we have now. It was a different world back then, and it's just like, even though things aren't perfect now, and we still have a long way to go as a community, I think that we've also made a lot of progress collectively as a community, and I hope we can maintain that trajectory.
I'm sure we will. We are, and again, this is where, kind of looking back at the past and seeing a lot of the similarities, there in the podcasts, the host, Morgan M. Page, she digs deep. She digs into these stories of like the the female husband, which was a story about someone who basically they just, they were a trans masculine person. But it became they were arrested for, impersonation or cross dressing. And this was in like the early 1900s, late 1800s.
Mm.
And it was a big story. It was in the newspapers, and it was, reporters are in the courtroom, they're all these salacious sort of stories, but the stories resonate just as much today as they did then. And again, that's where the inspiration comes in. It's like, wow, they were, folks in the 1880s were able to find a way to find community and to push forward, and just hearing these stories that are, because a lot of times the story doesn't change. Times change. Stories of our struggles, our perseverance, our resilience, those all, I think, resonate throughout time.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people who push back against the trans community love to repeat like the whole mantra of, oh, this is like a new thing that's happening now. And it's like, no, the trans people have been around since the beginning of humanity. We have a long and rich history. It's just something that we haven't necessarily been able to be as visible about until now. And I think visibility is so important because it allows people to reach that point of understanding, which is when acceptance can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm with you 100%.
So you've both mentioned how things are starting to become a little more better for our community. Thank goodness for that. Um, but as you mentioned earlier, the over there at the center, you guys are starting to expand more globally as well. And of course, the Trans Academy as well is a very global operation. So I'm wondering if there's any local culture and societal norms that affect the space uh, affect the way your space operates. And on a global scale, is there any legal restrictions or diversity of cultures that can hinder that a bit?
You know, not sure I can answer that fully just because I don't I I've been so laser focused for 13 years on just on this community. And I have
Hmm.
to push myself to think a little more globally about what the impact I have on people, in the UK or somewhere else. Um, yeah, I that's a very you bring up a good point because I think that's something that I think many of us do is we get obviously we're very invested in what in our own lives and being focused on that, but being able to look beyond that and how can again it gets back to being an activist. How can you make a difference on a global sort of level? And I think what you all are doing, to me, this is where the global a global change can occur. Because you're tapped into the community all over, and that to me is really exciting and really, I think what you all are doing is kind of the way that global sort of reach can take place. We're still getting there. Trans Lounge is 9 years old, and um, I was telling the folks before we went on that maybe I mentioned it in here. Sorry, but we've had clients join us or members join us from as far away as Jerusalem, and so we can touch. We've had a little bit of a reach, but that's something that again can always be improved upon, at least from my perspective. Being a little more aware of what goes on outside of your circle, of outside of your purview, and just being. I mean, you don't have to soak in. There's a lot of negative news that we hear, so you have to be very cautious with how much you take in. I know I suffered mightily from compassion fatigue, and a little bit of burnout because you take all of this in, and it can look in certain moments it can look like things are really dire, but you have to keep the hope, and that's again where the community comes in, and where spaces like Trans Academy I think really benefits our our movement, our communities.
One of the beautiful things about VR chat is just how much of a cultural melting pot it is, and just how it's kind of enabled me to have different cultural experiences that I would have never have been able to have otherwise. I mean, like on our staff, we have, people from Germany, the UK, Australia, all over the place. And hearing like the different stories from people and kind of the issues that they have to deal with in their location is so eye-opening, and it's something that I otherwise wouldn't have had any understanding of if I didn't have access to a global community like that. And so I think in that sense,
Yeah,
social VR is just really powerful for connecting an international community, as you're saying.
absolutely, absolutely. Y'all are doing such amazing work, so kudos to you all and keep moving forward.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you both so much. With about 10 minutes left, I wonder if there's anything else you would both like to say.
Um, well, again, I'm so thrilled to be able to spend time with you all and to be welcomed into this space as you have. It's been really eye-opening for me and really inspirational because to tap into another way of communicating, another way of connecting. There can never be enough of it. So, however, whatever form that takes for you all, I just encourage everyone, be be in the moment, be willing to do the work, because sometimes being even just trying to connect with a small pod of community can take work. And it's just being aware, practicing self-care, self-love. These things are to me, those are the first two big steps. Self-love, number one, self-acceptance, and then from there, you know, then your rocket is lit, I think. And then once you start getting out there and finding your peeps, the sky's the limit for each and every one of you. It's just up it's up to all of us to share our wisdom, share our knowledge, share our resources, but share our stories. That's the elixir. That's where things are going to happen when we share who we are with one another.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, the technology is amazing and it's so cool that we have this. But what really matters at the end of the day is the end outcome, and that is creating unity in our community. And it doesn't matter if it's in VR or if it's in real life. The goal should be connecting everybody despite the platform, regardless of it, because we are stronger together. And when people are united, we're going to be more effective in pushing back against that hate and paving a better future for the trans community.
Absolutely. And again, it doesn't have to be super heavy lifts. I mean, a lot of times it's like, oh, I'm an organizer, or I do this, or I do that. As we've been saying, share your story, write a song, write a short story, a poem, uh, you know, do more VR chats, Discord and Trans Academy. And there's so many spaces now. There's so many opportunities for people to expand other folks' mind and to enlighten people by telling stories, by sharing experiences, and just being together. It's just so vital for all of us.
Absolutely. Gina, thank you again so much for joining us today. It really does mean a lot to me, and I'm looking forward to figuring out how we can work together in the future.
Well, Tizzy, Shay, thank you so much. And V and Remy and everybody who's been so kind and welcoming me into these spaces. It's been an absolute pleasure to spend some time with you all. And I will just throw it out there one more time. If folks are interested in connecting with us, you can do so by reaching out to translounge.org. And like I said, registration is free once you get registered, and there's no obligation. It's not like once you registered, you have to come to this or you have to come to that. But dip your toe in, come to a couple of groups, and just get connected with community. And it doesn't matter where you are. It can, we've got plenty of virtual spaces where folks can connect, as well as the in-person social events and things that we're doing. So translounge.org, we would love to hear from you. If you want to reach out to us, you can reach out to us via email at translounge@LA LGBTcenter.org. feel free to drop us a line. If there's anything that we can do to be able to help, to uplift, to support, to share resources, whatever we can do, we're here to do it.
And y'all
Thank
have a
you.
Discord, right?
We do, yes. It's for members only, though, because again, it's all about it's about the safety of everybody. So, if folks want to access our Discord, the first step would be signing up for the program, and that again, that would be at translounge.org.
Awesome.
Perfect. Thank you again, Gina, for coming. I'm echoing Tizzy. I'm very glad you came to speak with us. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to see what we can do together in the future. And thank you again.
Absolutely.
And Tizzy as well. Thanks for talking.
Of course. Thank you for hosting.
All right. I think
Thank
that's
you,
it.
folks.